Welcome to Fire Engineering Training Minutes. I'm Scott Kleinschmidt. Today, Seth Taylor is going to review how to properly conduct your morning checks with your equipment when you arrive at the firehouse, specifically on the saws.
So let's go over a general inspection of our chainsaw in the morning. Whenever I come out, I usually like to have a nice routine on how to go around the saw. I start at the front end of the bar. The first thing I'm going to do is check my chain and make sure that our teeth are pointed away from us. Remember, the saw rotates around and then comes back into the saw on the bottom. So I'm looking, make sure my teeth are pointed forward, away from me. I'm also going to check tension here. I'm checking for general cleanliness and make sure nothing's missing. As I come down the side, I get to my side plate, make sure both bar nuts are intact and that the saw is clean in general. I'm also going to take a look at the fins back here underneath the handle and make sure that it's not filthy, where it's going to hold a lot of heat later on. Coming around, I'll go ahead and flip it up. A couple things I'm looking for is chain catcher here, and then also make sure my foot is intact here. That also acts as a chain catcher, so I want to make sure that that's in good shape. Rolling around to the back of the saw, I'm going to check my safety switches, my on-off switch. The other thing I'm going to look at is my throttle lock. Make sure that this is coming up. We don't want to throttle the saw whenever we put our foot in to start it. As we move around the back of the saw, onto this side, I come into and I've got my oiler, my fuel oiler. I'm also looking for general cleanliness here. One of the other things I'm looking for is if I have a handle, my pull handle is over on the side like this. I want to make sure I'm going to go ahead and fix that. That's a simple task of pulling this off and re-wrap, putting an additional wrap on there. So whenever I let go, the handle pops back in, stays nice and high and tight. So I'm coming around, working around the front. I want to make sure if I have these extra additional plates that those stay nice and tight. Over time, a lot of times those will vibrate loose. And then I'm actually going to shake the muffler behind there. And then finally, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to make sure my chain brake pops nice and releases. And then I'm going to pick the saw up and actually give it a little bit of shake. Make sure that I don't have any rough feeling there where I'd have a broken anti-vibration. At that point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm ready to go ahead and start my saw. Now we're going to take up on the morning inspection of our radial saw. I'm going to start out on the front of the saw. Again, I'm going to have a methodical working down and around. I'm going to start out with my blade. Remember, if we have a cut style tooth, that tooth is going to be traveling forward, down, and back into the saw. I'm going to go ahead and spin through and look, and if I find something like this where I have a piece missing, that's going to be something that I'm looking for initially, and I'm going to replace that out with a different blade. As I come back around, I'm going to check my guard. I want to take the guards and make sure that they're free, that they'll move whenever I need them to, and make sure everything's good and tight on this front end. If I need this particular saw set up in an outboard style, you can refer to your owner's manual on how to do that. Most of the saws are pretty similar, but you have some bolts here, and that's what those unbolt, and that allows you to reverse this saw over. Okay, if it's either way, as I come back, I'm going to check the tensioning. There's several different styles of tensioning systems. Be sure and refer to your owner's manual, and the newer saws, they have some updated changes. But whenever it's all said and done, there's a little finger slot in here, and I can push through here and feel the actual chain tension. Now I've got the saw up, I'm going to go ahead and look, make sure that my rubber feet, any of those are all intact, so I'm not tearing up the saw whenever I let it set in idle. Working down, everything looks good here. As I come down, I've got my fuel. I'm going to go ahead and check that and move around. Whenever I get here, I've got my throttle lock. I want to make sure that this throttle lock comes up. That keeps me from triggering the saw with my foot if I have to put my foot in the back here. Then I'm going to go ahead and pay attention to my choke and make sure on my stop that I'm actually in a position where I'm able to start the saw. As I roll around, I'm taking a look for any kind of signs that this saw's been used and then stuck back in the compartment, looking for anything that's dirty in here. If I see that, then I'm going to do a little more detailed inspection. I'm going to pull off and look at the air filter, whatnot. Again, if I see the handle down like this, I want this to pop back in. Whenever I release it, I want it to come back in nice and tight. Checking my handle, moving around, I get up to the muffler. Again, make sure that's nice and tight. Everything looks good. I'm going to pick it up, do a little shake, make sure I don't have any kind of weird feelings where it's real abrupt. It should be nice and or a smooth kind of bounce. And at that point, I'm ready to go ahead and start my morning saw warm up.
We just demonstrated how to properly check out your saw at the beginning of your shift. I'm Scott Kleinschmidt.
And I'm Seth Taylor.
Thanks for watching Fire Engineering Training Minutes.